Thank you very much, Zach. You may have guessed the answer to this question is yes. We didn't bring you in here to tell you that this wasn't possible. And in particular, I want to tell you about the kinds of solutions that are best for going from idea to solution in less than 2 hours with Appian Quick Apps. Your typical Appian solution today looks something like this. It's sleek, it is fast. We are the fastest to-market solution for custom applications. It can fly around the world. We have customers who literally run their multinational corporations on Appian, and it's extremely powerful. But when you already have that, sometimes there's something else you want in addition. Because there's a lot of kinds of work in the world, and sometimes once you've landed your big jumbo jet, it might be nice just to have a car to drive across town. And there's a lot of things to like about this. Everybody already knows how to drive a car. It's a lot easier to park than a jumbo jet. And this is the kind of solution that we're delivering with Appian Quick Apps. So as we describe Appian Quick Apps today, I'm gonna go over what they are and how you would build them. Suvajit, in turn, is gonna go over what they mean for Appian and for you, who they'll benefit in your organization, and when and where in your organization they will see use. So to get things started, let me be very clear. This is our definition of Quick Apps. We thought very hard about all the words on this slide. And Quick Apps empower business users. That means everyone who has access to Appian can build a Quick App if they're configured to be allowed to do so. They're able to quickly build tools for dynamic work themselves without requiring any Appian training. If we're gonna make this accessible potentially to anyone who can get to Appian, we can't require training to do that. It has to be truly walk-up usable without any prior instruction. If we're gonna let people do that, then they also need to just as easily be able to update that functionality. They need to be able to do it without downtime, without going back to dev, without disturbing their users in any way. If they make a quick app, they see something that needs to be changed, they need to be able to just go change it. When I say tools for dynamic work, I don't mean traditional BPM. BPM applications are workflow-centric. Appian is already very good at those. Quick apps are best for dynamic work, and dynamic work, by contrast, is people-centric. It's information-centric. It's the kind of work that comes up around your workflows, that relies on ad hoc collaboration. It relies on the fact that you know a lot about your work, and you know the right person to answer this question, and you know who should see this piece of information. And here's some examples of how that can look today. When doing this kind of dynamic work in your organization. You have your data. It might be in a spreadsheet, it might be in an email. You might just have a whiteboard that you're tracking something on as questions come up. And you need the right people to get to see that information. You need the right people to be updating it, to be showing it to other people, and using it in the right ways at the right time. And they need to also be able to find that whenever they need. And all of the ways that I just described to do this work fine, but they have the same set of limitations. Where is the right version of that spreadsheet? Which email thread did it go into? Can my remote worker see that whiteboard at all? And we believe that this is the kind of work that Appian Quick Apps is uniquely suited to do. Not only will this tool help with your dynamic work, but it brings it into Appian along with your other enterprise data. So let's talk about exactly how you'll see that enabled in Appian 16.2. The first thing to know is there's a new role here to work with Quick Apps. The roles that you see on the right should already be familiar to you. The system administrators who configure entire environments, the designers who build BPM applications today, and the users who consume those applications. The new role here allows you to configure anyone in your enterprise to be able to use Appian Quick Apps. This is the view of the profile menu within Appian, where someone who has access to it will see a link to the Quick Apps Designer. This is a new location, accessible from Tempo, where you can see, create, and update the Quick Apps that you have on your system. I'm going to go through this very quickly just to set some anchor points for the demo that we're going to see in a little bit here. So these new users have access to a new location, and the experience of creating a Quick App is just a few simple screens. You're going to name your Quick App, you're going to say the information you want it to capture, and you're going to say that the users who should work in this particular Quick App, and you're done. Not only is it less than 2 hours, it's actually, in most cases, less than 15 minutes. When that Quick App is created, it is a normal Appian application. It's not built with some special sauce. It uses the same design objects that Appian applications use today. And in a lot of the ways, it's going to look very familiar to you in Tempo. This is the record list of a quick app, and it looks like other record lists. So it's not going to be some set apart experience that has nothing to do with the rest of the things that are happening in Tempo. So with that, let's show you exactly how these get made. The demo story we're going to go over today is of a work journal. And specifically, we're going to talk about an auditing team led by Tasia. And this auditing team already has Appian, and they use it for a customer audit process. They're already pretty established doing this. They've had Appian for a little while. This application is working well for them. But in addition to the work that they're getting done in this traditional BPM application, they also have a lot of communications with their customers and a lot of phone calls, questions, email, things like, can you remind me when the due date for this is? I'd like to resubmit this thing that I see in coming out of the audit process. I think you got this piece of information wrong. Generally speaking, things that require some amount of action, they require someone to know the right thing to do next. And importantly, they don't fit neatly within the existing audit process. You could imagine trying to enhance that BPM application to capture these sorts of things, but the fact is that they're a little bit different every time. They don't necessarily work perfectly within a predefined workflow. So Tasia, who already has Appian, is going to build a quick app to capture these customer requests within a quick app. So let's go to the Quick Apps Designer, and we'll go through how Tasia creates this quick app. So you already saw this a few slides ago. She selects that she'd like to create a new quick app. In some of the team meetings, the concept for this has been being called a journal. You know, if we could just have a journal, write down everything that happens. So that name is kind of stuck. She's going to use it here, put in a description to let everyone know what they're supposed to use it for. And in addition to naming the quick app, you have to name the things that it's going to capture. So what do you capture in a journal? You're capturing journal entries, of course. Having done that, she's going to move on to the information to capture in this quick app. There's a couple fields that are predefined: the title, status, and priority of each entry in this quick app, each customer request. And she's going to add a couple more fields that she needs to capture. This part started going very quickly for her because they had an existing spreadsheet that they were using. So to start with, she's copying over the column names from that spreadsheet. You know, this is the information that I want to capture here. And this is just this is very straightforward. The information you'd want to capture if a customer calls you, the time that they called you, the account of who called you, how long it took, who's responsible for this work. And for each of these things, if you see the drop-down pop up, she's able to pick what kind of information that she's capturing. This is just text. This is a date, a number, a paragraph. And as she goes by account, you'll see that she's set that one to be a record. This is one of the really powerful things about quick apps, that you can connect them to the other records within Appian. So every customer request now can be linked to an account record that's already within Appian. She goes through and configures the options for each of these fields. So when someone fills out the status, she's going to put in status options that are uniquely accurate for the work that is happening in this particular quick app. When she moves on to the account field, she's going to pick the exact record type that it should point to. It should point to the customer record that is already in her Appian installation. And similarly, for picking a category or a resolution off the list of options, she's going to go through and she's going to put in the options that her team will be able to pick every time they put an entry into this journal. She can also reorder these fields, make them required, basic configurations to set up the information that she's capturing here. And to see how this will appear to her users, she's able to preview the form that they're going to see every time that they enter their information. So when she finishes typing the last resolution option here, we're going to see what that preview looks like. She's pretty much done, and we're going to go ahead and preview. This is exactly the form that her users will see every time they fill something out. So she tests here that what she said is a user field is actually going to be a user picker that's automatically configured for her because that's the kind of information she's capturing. The last thing here that she configures is who should use this app. Now, if she wanted to, she could leave this as just herself for now to go look at the application and make sure the functionality was right, then come back and put her team in. But she goes ahead and sets up her team right away. And this takes, we've elided it here, but it takes usually about 30 seconds to make a quick app. There's a lot of things being generated under the hood. And at the end, she's given links to the new functionality that is available on Tempo. So at this point, we're done. That was, I think, about 3 minutes. Now, granted, she knew exactly what she wanted to capture going in. So if you're sitting there and you're trying to figure out, do I want this field, do I not? It can take longer. But the great thing about quick apps is you don't have to worry about that up front. You can go ahead and get started. If you realize you forgot something, you can just come back and add it later. And we'll see that in a few minutes. So we're going to fast forward about a week. And we're going to see how her team is using this quick app on Tempo. So one of her team members logs in, and in the Actions tab, there's a new action to create journal entries. This is the same field we saw earlier, and she's going to fill out information about the customer call that has just happened. She just hung up the phone, and she's going to fill out all the information about this. Only a couple fields are required, so again, she could fill it all out now. She could come back later to fill it out. And this works just like any other Appian start form, and it creates a record within Appian. So she fills out here the notes that are a short description of the call. That's one of the fields that were added. And goes ahead, this is just a request for more information from the customer, and creates that. You can immediately see that in her record list, there's a new journal entries record. This is similar to what we saw earlier. She is able to go into that record if she finds out more information and update it. In this case, there's a field for the directly responsible individual, the person who owns each piece of work. And she found out that it should be Patrick in this case, so she updates that. It's immediately reflected on the record. And she sends him a task to let him know, hey, you should come have a look at this. There's something you need to check out here, because she knows Patrick is the right person to look at this particular thing. So the tools this is when I said tools would be automatically provided, this is what I meant. Tasia didn't say when making this quick app, oh, I need the ability to send tasks and messages or to upload files to records. That's just provided for free. So the worker here is able to notify the person that they should come look at this record. And that actually, a summary of that work appears here on the dashboard to let other people know there's some pending work that's assigned to this guy. In the news tab, there are messages that can be sent from, see if I can figure out how to pause here. Okay, I'll catch up to that. You can send a message to the entire team, which is what we saw go by briefly in the news tab. And here, Bree, the worker, is going through a task that was assigned to her. In this case, she opened the task form, and it had a summary of the work she was asked to do, as well as linking to the record she got a task from. So she goes to that record, reviews it, updates it with what she's been asked to do. In this case, there was a question about the accuracy of some numbers, so she comes in and says, well, I went and reviewed the numbers. I know this is a tricky one, but these are actually correct already, so there's no need to worry here. And she fills it out, and she updates the record because she got a task to do that. And when she's done with that, she's going to go back to the task and send it back to Patrick and say, I'm done. I answered the question, and when you talk to the customer, she's going to fill out here, when you talk to this customer, please remind them that this is always the way that this one works. So you can feel the pattern of work here, that as these come in and are entered, there's tools for getting to the right people. There's tools for letting people know, yes, I got this. When she finishes this task, Patrick, who sent it to her, is automatically going to get an email saying that she finished the task. There's built-in tools to support this free flow of information and work between the people that it's supposed to go to. Back on the record, for those who weren't involved in the task, anybody else can come to that same record and see a history of anything that's ever happened on that record. So we're going to go here to the activity history view on this record, and there's a grid here that has literally everything that has ever happened to this record. What she wants to find out is if Patrick sent his boss a task as well. So she filters by him, she filters by a word, and sees, in fact, he did send a task to Tasia. And she's very quickly able to find out with certainty that that did happen because the full history of the record is captured here. And she comes and finds that Tasia completed the task as well. So now she knows what else has happened to this record with a high degree of certainty. Lastly, she goes into the reports tab where there is a report for this application, for this quick app. It shows some statistics on the quick apps on the records that have been created in this quick app. And at the bottom, there's a grid of all of the records here. Now, this enables a couple different kinds of searching, sorting, and filtering. What she's going to do, because she wants to find out if there's any records that she should look at, she filters by the first status, which is work that's just been entered, and the highest priority. When she sees, great, there's actually no records that show up when I do that. So there's nothing that I have to go look at right now. Everyone's actually on top of everything already. Now there's a lot of other browsing, filtering, searching she could do here, but her goal with the report was to look at those trends and say, based on those trends, is there something that can I filter them down to find the one thing that I should go look at? The answer was no in this case, so she logged back out. And in just that 5-10 minutes we saw, Bree has been able to conclusively show that she has done all the work she needs to on this topic. It's not just that, well, I did the one thing someone asked of me, or I answered the email I got. I actually know that all of the work on this topic I've completed for the day. I can log out and I can come back later because Appian is capturing it, sending it to the right people, and it's tracking what gets done. So fast forwarding another week, Tasia is going to come in. Now that people have been using it, there's data in the system, she's getting feedback, and she's going to make updates to this quick app. So we're going to see that next. I want to point out before we start that this update is happening live. Tasia's doing it on the same system that already has the quick app. This is effectively an update in production. This is sort of the moral equivalent of changing your wheels while you're on the highway on your car. But her users are going to have a seamless experience despite that. So she goes into the quick app and goes over to the information, the form page that defines the information she's capturing, and just makes a few changes based on feedback. This is the kind of feedback that I'm sure all of you are familiar with the software you put out there. Hey, there's some categories that are missing here that I often wish I could put. Can you add a couple options to this dropdown? Something very simple, and it actually is simple to do in quick apps. It's quick to change. She's able to put them in. She takes the most common option, she puts it to the top of the list because everyone's picking that. It's easier to have it at the top of the list. She goes to another field and just makes the label a little shorter because, sorry, that's backwards. She adds instructions to a field that people have been getting wrong. Hey, if you fill out this field, please make sure to do it this way. Simple changes that still really affect how effectively people can get work done. Can you make this label shorter or clearer? Can you add instructions here? Can you reorganize this? And it's as easy to do as it is to describe. She previews it and sees that the form is a little unbalanced now because we added those checkbox options over there. So she's going to go and she's going to fix that. She reorders a few fields, and her goal now is to make the form look better. She's made some changes, they unbalance it, and she's able to preview it inline and find a way to make it look better. So now with the reorganization, the form is nicely balanced, and she's really happy with the changes she made. And lastly, she makes a couple fields required because she's realized they really do always want to capture this information. So she makes it required on the form. She updates it, and a few seconds later, again, this takes about 30 seconds, the changes are live. Anyone on the system will see the changes immediately. There's no downtime, there's nothing that breaks, and they're able to just continue doing their work with an improved app on the fly. So in about 10 minutes total, what we've seen here is creating an enterprise application, pushing it out to your users with no delay, immediate benefit to those users for a kind of work they weren't able to do in Appian before, then coming back to that quick app and making an on-the-fly update to improve it for your users without any downtime, without going back to your dev environment, without any disruption to your users. That is what we're enabling with Appian Quick Apps. Now I'm going to hand it over to Suvajit to talk about how this is going to impact Appian as well as your organization.
Thank you, John. All right. So I lead the Appian engineering team. I like to put my energy behind the things that I believe make the biggest impact. We love transformations. So last year, I was on stage presenting Sites. How many of you use Sites? Any show of hands? A few of you hopefully adopting it. This year, we're talking about Quick Apps, and I'll talk about Quick Apps plus Sites. So we believe that we're really at an inflection point for Appian as well as all of you, our customers. Three things are going to get transformed as we roll out Quick Apps. We have a free trial for Appian prospects that want to come in and see what Appian can do for them. And now with Quick Apps, you can imagine they can just get into a site, build something, and just understand what happened, right? It's that easy. There's no training involved. It's transforming our users because you heard today they can now become citizen developers with no training. They can build an app. And lastly, our designers that go through a week-long training, then get certifications and lots of additional training, they can now use this technology. I was in a 5-day designer class. I was auditing that a few weeks ago. And it takes us about 4.5 days to build all the piece parts of an app. And then Friday afternoon, if you've done well, you stitch it together and you get your first app. Well, now, at Monday morning, at about 9:05 a.m., you're going to have your app up and running. So that's what I would consider a turning point. A lot of things are being transformed with this technology. Many of you remember the transition as we went from Web 1.0, where we'd read websites, to Web 2.0, where you could now tweet, you can post on Facebook, you can comment on a blog. It was a transformation, right, for the world. We believe a similar thing is going to happen for Appian users, right? Now they're not just using these apps that the designers built for them. They're going to create apps, and who knows what the possibilities are. You know, they're truly endless. This might cause the app sprawl problem that you heard Matt Calkins talk about. We have a couple of protections in place, so you will have to decide who you allow to build quick apps, and there's a place in the administration console that you can specify the subset of the people that you trust to build these things. You can also put in some lightweight governance to make sure that as they build quick apps that there's some checks and balances that you allow them to put those into production. You can even use them outside of production. I'll talk more about that. But this, like the transformation to Web 2.0, this is the Appian 2.0, if you will, right? Everybody's going to be building apps. So I went to a conference a few years ago, and talking about tweeting, I had picked up this thing about good software lets you do cool things, and great software does cool things for you. In fact, this was highly retweeted, and it's my blurb on Appian, in our Appian home, our intranet. And as I was thinking about what we just accomplished here with Quick Apps, last year, John was up on stage presenting about our designers. We have about 20 designers that provide all the power of Appian, and they let you do cool things. You can build really cool apps, and most of you have. However, with Quick Apps, now we're going to do cool things for you, right? That wizard that you saw, the 4-step wizard, you just enter that, and we're done. Thanks for telling us about your app. So this is truly another transformation. If you look at the world of work automation, you kind of think of two dimensions. Let's say on the y-axis, you have the flexibility of the tool, right? Think about what you can do with it. What use cases can you automate with? So that's one axis. And the other axis is the complexity of using the tool, right? And so BPM, and we're really good at it, is to the far right. Right? You can do pharmacovigilance, you can do anti-money laundering. Many of you are doing really complex, powerful things with Appian. However, it comes at a price. You have to learn how to wield the tool. On the other end of the spectrum, lower left, are what I call software as a toy. We're software as a service, it's a joke. But software as a toy, like you take a tool like if then else, right? It'll very quickly let you build something simple, but that's about it. You're not going to be doing some global enterprise application on that. Quick Apps is the best of both worlds. It actually is remarkably easy to learn. You saw that, how easy it was. And at the same time, it almost approaches the complexity of the kinds of applications you can build with BPM, right? So it's truly the best of both worlds. So to kind of recap what you witnessed here, Quick Apps actually touches a lot of people. It obviously helps the Quick Apps creator, the special few that are permitted to make these things. It benefits the users of Appian because they could only get apps, right? Once a month, once a year, they'd get another app, from their few designers. Well, they can get apps as fast as they want, right? A lot of us in IT are, we're all very impatient. When I have an idea, I want it in production. And there is no faster way to get idea to production than Quick Apps. And last but not least, the designers, right? Were any of you in the lead customer session yesterday? Show of hands. We did a skit. A few of you. So the joke was that IT is always swamped. You go ask them to do something, and the answer is maybe next year, right? And so you don't have to wait for IT anymore, right? A lot of times, if you have a small, simple thing to automate, you can just do it. And then when you give it back to IT to do, even more complicated things, they get a pre-built application that is health tech certified. In fact, what John showed you, if you look under the hood, there are about 80 to 85 design objects that are built directly from the wizard. They're health tech certified. You can use them as a starting point and make further extensions. So for the designer, this is a great boon. They can get something started that they can then further evolve. So we're helping all of our constituencies. Many of you, whether you're on cloud or on-premise, you have at least 3 environments. Some of you have 4 or more. So you start using Appian in development to build your applications. Then, of course, you'll send it for independent verification and validation, IVNV, to some testers that'll check it out. And then you might even go through a staging environment to make sure that it matches the production setup before you go put it in production. So think about that. In a really well-run company, the best ones I've seen, you might be talking weeks, sometimes months, to go from that orange to the green, right? And remember, we're all impatient. We want that thing, that competitive benefit out in production running quickly. That's a pain, right? Waiting for Appian's fast, but I say it's like almost hurry up to the next red light, right? You got your app built, congratulations. Now you can wait for weeks for someone to not move it to the next environment, right? With Quick Apps, you skip all that fun and you work in production. And you saw that the Quick Apps creator takes this, builds it, deploys it. On minute 16, the users are using it and they give feedback. And through that feedback, there's no better way to be agile, right? Because you take this thing that you had, you start using it, it was probably a bad idea to begin with, but then it gets better and it gets better and it becomes useful. So you go through this really virtuous cycle of build, use, refine. That's called agile, right? And if you hit a wall, let's say you get to the point that you've had too much success. One of the examples that I talk about is that within engineering, we do a lot of knowledge sharing. So let's say I wanted to run a brown bags quick app, right? I build this brown bags quick app, and then people say we need to have a speaker and a training room and order lunch, so we kind of evolve it. But at some point, we might be having too many brown bags, right? It's killing us, too many meetings, people want to stop it. And maybe we want to put it into more of a guardrail base, like, look, if someone proposes a brown bag, we approve only a few, and then someone has to approve it. At that point, if you really want to stop the app sprawl or the proliferation of these kinds of things, you can just pause it, export it. It's going to go over to development, where you can then put a proper BPM and model on it, right? Then you put the XOR node, and unless it's approved, it can't happen, right? You can do all of that. And then, of course, if you make changes like that, you need to make sure you test it, you stage it, you bring it back into production. But that's the kind of stuff, it's very, very flexible, right? Use it where it's appropriate. I said yesterday that Quick Apps does make changes to your production data. So some customers or their IT may not want you to be making modifications to your schema in production. So if you're not cool, then you could also use it in development, right? That's a joke. If you can't because IT doesn't allow it, then of course you don't miss out on the fun. You can still use Quick Apps in development, and within minutes you can get an app. The only downside of doing it the second way is that the feedback you're going to get will be the feedback from testing it, right? You build it, you test it, you find some stuff, maybe that's it. And then, of course, you have to still wait for weeks or months to see what really happens. And you miss out on the benefit of basically getting that instantaneous feedback, right? You just start small and be agile. So you really can't do that. So in summary, you're going to see Quick Apps all over the place, this Appian world. But I wanted to drive home 4 of the most exciting points about Quick Apps, right? You've heard about the no training, a user with no training in Appian, no 5-day class, you can build a Quick App. This idea of dynamic work, of course you can use our BPM tool, that jumbo jet, to maybe go drive down to the neighborhood grocery store and then you can't park it. Quick Apps lets you do dynamic work very, very simply, right? You can, of course, use our BPM tool to do this, but dynamic work is a different category of work, right? We are seeing that a lot of our customers have work where they're kind of figuring out what they're doing. There's no complex process, there's no structure. They just know how to work together, right? Instead of losing your sticky notes in your emails and your attachments, put it in an Appian record. Use Appian News to collaborate. Task and message each other, right? The whole part of Appian is there, except no XOR nodes in the way, right? We're not going to force you down a path. You know what to do. We just silently get out of the way. So that's the idea of the dynamic work. Agile discovery. In my mind, again, I've been doing software for a long time. I'm not arrogant enough to know what I really want until I see it, right? You have to build it, you have to use it, and then you realize what you really wanted. And we don't cycle through requirements documents, cycle through the Quick App, right? Get it to a point that it's what you want, and then if you really want to make more changes, take it back to development and make it better. And last but not least, immediately available. I cannot underscore the significance of that, right? You've probably never experienced like that 0-day app where the manager comes and tells you to build an app and you laugh at them, right? You heard about that from Clay. You don't have to laugh anymore. You can use it. In fact, I would suggest that Matt gave the order that before this Appian world is over, all of you should build a Quick App. We've got a booth set up over there in the Independence Room foyer. I would encourage you all to come and experience it yourself. There's nothing better than doing it. So with that, I think we're ready to take some questions. So John, come on up. You can answer the hard questions. All right? There must be some questions. So how many of you are planning to, now that you heard this, think you're going to use Quick Apps? Anybody? Has anybody gone to that booth and tried a Quick App? Yes? Great. How was it? Quick. All right.
Hey guys, we have a question right here.
I think you might have alluded to this. What would be the pathway in a little bit more detail between a Quick App, perhaps, and a more full-featured traditional Appian BPM app?
Yep. So let me go back to that slide. So a quick app is an app. There's nothing special about it. It's built with Appian design objects. You can export it. You can take it somewhere else. And so there's no real difference. We're just hiding a lot of the details under the wizard, right? So in all respects, it's the same thing as an app. So you can build it here and take it there, modify it, bring it back. It just plays very well with other Appian apps. In fact, many of the examples that you saw, when you have pre-existing records, you can link to them, right? So you're building on the success of maybe your really complicated BPM app, right? Think of this as leveraging what you've already invested in.
Yeah. So to be specific, at the moment when you see the quick app is complete, if you were able to, maybe not in production, but to go to the design environment at that time, you'd see another application in the list. You could go into it, it would have 80 plus design objects. So from that point, enhancing it follows a very similar path to enhancing any other application. You export it, take it back to dev, build it out the way you would build a normal EPM application, and then bring it back into production.
In fact, there's a session in parallel right now where the same quick apps technology, the wizard that generates the objects, we primarily talked about if you're a user with no training, that you can use this wizard, create an app, evolve it, and then move it somewhere else. We've also leveraged this technology in our designer environment. So now when you go to, say, make a new application, you can use this technology to generate these 80 plus objects John talked about. And that's the endpoint. Because you know how to use the designers, we don't keep you in the wizard anymore. You just use that as an accelerator. It's a builder, and it creates all these objects. And then you can use the designers that you got trained to use to make further changes. Does that answer your question?
And that's a really important distinction, that the Quick Apps Designer is really optimized for those users who have not had Appian training. If you want to leverage that technology to just get started very, very rapidly on a traditional application, you can use the wizard that Suvit is talking about in the Appian Designer environment, and it will simply make and navigate you into a normal application where you're immediately put into the design objects where you can start editing them and enhancing them.
Other questions? Yes. Sorry, I can't.
Didn't quite catch that. Sorry.
Will not.
Oh, there we go.
Hello?
There we go.
At last.
How you would validate that the new quick apps in production will not impact the existing ones?
That's a fantastic question.
Repeat the question.
The question was, how do you make sure that these quick apps, if you make them in production, how do you make sure they don't affect your existing applications? So the functionality of a quick app, as you saw through the demos, is standalone functionality. The ways in which it integrates with the other applications is primarily to point to their data. You saw how I pointed to a record, the customer record in the demo. That makes a pointer from the quick app to that customer record, but it doesn't change that customer record. That functionality is unchanged. So making a new quick app will add functionality for your users in production, but it will never change the existing things that they're already experiencing there.
Yeah, if I may add to that, this morning Matt talked about if you build a quick app and let's say you're done with it, you don't want to use it anymore, and you want to delete it, you delete everything that was created. We don't leave any crumbs behind us, right? So that way you know that's what he meant by the sandbox. You're sort of operating an environment, if you clean up, you're done, no residue left. And of course, the data continues to work with the evolved quick app. So we have a lot of mechanisms built in that you can't actually make something break. It's just not possible. You're operating through the wizard, not at the level of the design objects. Yes?
What kicks off the process? Does quick apps have a beginning and an end to the process, like a traditional process? And the second part, can you elaborate on what the audit trail is? Like what data is tracked?
Sure. So there were two questions there. One is what kicks off the process of a quick app? Does a quick app have a beginning and an end? And I think you mean the workflow within a quick app. And the second is, can I elaborate a little more on how the activity history or the audit trail works? The first question is a great clarification about quick apps because they don't have an inherent workflow. You might create a quick app where the status is inherently chronological and each record would naturally move through all the statuses, but there's really no requirement that happens. That was the reason I emphasized that these are not workflow centric. they're data centric. So as the information changes, people come in as they need to update it or to send tasks. There's not an inherent workflow in a quick app.
So is that just the entries in that drop down, in progress, rejected, or finalized? That's all that defines where in the...
That is the only thing that defines the
So repeat
status. The question was, do the things in the drop-down, or is that the only thing that defines the progress of work? Yes. That is what defines the current status of work being done. With regard to the activity history, the way it captures information is in the format of who took what action, what are the details of that action, and when did they take it. So there's a kind of a short palette of actions that people can take in a quick app. They can make a record, they can update a record, they can send tasks and messages, complete tasks, and each of those shows up as a discrete action in the audit trail. And so what went by in the demo video there was that I filtered on a user, so it pulled up all the actions that they had taken with respect to that one record, and then I entered a search term that filtered the rest of the remaining entries on entries that contained that word. So each of them follows the same format in a palette of options, basically.
In fact, in this area, Quick Apps is ahead of the current product because you have to do work to make that audit trail happen. You just get it for free in a Quick App, which is fantastic. Yes? You want to use the mic? It might be helpful.
So what I understood is you have a quick app creator, and then you can extend it. If you can go back to the previous slide that you had.
Oh, previous to this?
With the 3 columns and the arrows.
The columns. That was the columns one.
Okay, so that's okay, I can talk to it. So once you have extended it with additional, design objects, would you be able to still do the round tripping? Would you be able to go back and evolve it?
Okay, I'm glad you asked that. So the question was, I think the microphone is getting on the recording, but I'll repeat it just for the room in case, is once you have extended a Quick App and brought it back into production, can you still do round trips in the Quick Apps Designer? That's a great question. The answer is no. At least in 16.2, the answer is no. Once you make those enhancements, it stops being a Quick App and becomes a normal application. When you bring it back into production, from that point on, it's a one-time choice. Once you start enhancing it, from then on, you're going to need to work with it like you would any other application. So it will no longer be modifiable in the Quick Apps Designer once you've made changes. The general rule is once you make changes outside of the Quick Apps Designer to any of those objects, you'll no longer be able to modify it in the Quick Apps Designer. So you do all of the round tripping and iteration that Agile Development Suvajit talked about up front, and then once you start extending it, you treat it like a traditional application. Got a couple questions back there?
Great.
So assuming that we have, say 5 different people with access to the Quick Apps Designer, and they're building similar applications, and the example of the drop-down list, they could each create the same options in the drop-down list. I'm assuming that's going to create 5 different constants. Is there any best practices or recommendations on how to manage a situation like that so that we're reusing objects rather than creating them from scratch each time?
It's a good question. So the question was, if people are creating similar Quick Apps and they might have similar fields captured in each one, is there any way to follow our best practices and make sure that they modularize and use the same objects under the hood? Right now, as I said a couple answers ago, each Quick App is a standalone piece of functionality. To preserve that, we do intentionally make a separate set of design objects for each one, even if the way you're configuring the Quick App means that some of the objects are functionally identical. And that's to preserve our ability to say that each individual Quick App, you can take that back and modify it without affecting anything else in production or any of your other Quick Apps. So there's possible room for improvement there in the future to get really smart and identify those commonalities. Right now, we're focused on making sure that you can treat each of your Quick Apps individually, so they're standalone.
Yeah, and one thing to add to that is that with any kind of agility, there's going to be a level of chaos that you have to be willing to tolerate. It's so easy to make them and delete them and modify them that don't agonize about them, right? Let it happen, let it get to a certain point. If you really need to then make it a proper enterprise quality app, then bring it back to dev, hand it back to real developers that went through training. The whole point here is to unleash the innovation. Let this kind of run on its own for some time. So that's the spirit of it. Now, if we're lucky enough that there's so much adoption that these problems happen, be sure that we'll be able to come up with some ways to mitigate that. There was one more question. Yeah.
So I see that the activity history, is that part of your record going forward for even from the tempo and everything?
The
audit
I
trail?
didn't quite catch that. Can you speak up a little bit?
I'm sorry. You have the audit trail as part of the record.
Yes.
So is that going to be part of our record from Tempo and everything, or just from the quick apps?
That is a particular, so the question was that we showed an activity history, is that just part of Quick Apps records, or have we baked that into Tempo functionality in general? The answer is that we did that specifically as part of Quick Apps. That functionality is not unique to Quick Apps in that anyone developing an application can build that. We actually took as a principle that Quick Apps don't do, they don't generate things that designers couldn't build themselves. We didn't want to create forcing functions to make awkward incentives to use Quick Apps. You could build an audit trail like that for any of your existing records. It's actually not very complicated to do. It's just an extra layer you have to build into each application. So we haven't done anything new there, except that we've done it automatically for Quick Apps records. So it is not baked into Tempo as a whole.
And I think that is our last question, right? Zach, are we out of time?
I think we have time for just one more.
One last question. Anyone? Yes.
Over here.
One of you.
Saw that hand go up a little bit earlier, maybe?
All right.
So is there a process template, process map which comes with Quick App, which you can then evolve later? Or and when you import it and you want to add your process, how do you integrate your process with the multiple forms there?
So the question was, is there an innate process, like a process model under the hood, you mean, that comes with a Quick App to use when you're enhancing? The answer is absolutely yes. Each Quick App, if I'm remembering correctly, comes actually with 5 process models. Now, what we've done is the classic pattern we recommend for entity-backed records, data-centric records, which is that all of the process models are short-lived ones, except for when you send a task. Obviously, that's going to last as long as it takes the person to complete the task. So any of those models for creating or updating or sending a task, if you export it and go to look at it in dev, you can enhance any of those to say, well, it's in updating a Quick App that I need to add an approval. You can change just that process model and leave the other ones alone.
All right, I think that's it. Again, please go build a Quick App.